Chapter 1. Klara. We are daughters of daughters, a necklace of bloodied pearls linked in sanguine labours since the beginning of time. Mistresses of endurance, we struggle to survive while our daughters sang songs of older times, a flow of mythical tales, and dreamt of fairy godmothers. Who were they, those daughters of daughters, fading into the distant past of my family's history? What were they like, those women, who were my mother's ancestors? They were women who came from somewhere in Central Europe back through centuries to the Middle Ages and beyond into prehistory. What were their joys and struggles? Only one fact about them remains. Each one had a daughter who had a daughter, and all those daughters were the generations that brought me here. I wish I could understand the thoughts and feelings of the women. Klara Rosalia Adelheid Schmidt, who was my German grandmother, a woman who I never met, even although she was alive into the 1970s. I've never even seen a photograph of her, so I have no idea what she looked like. She is a mystery to me, so I must use my imagination and the little information I have to conjure up her part of the story. It's a family lore passed down from my mother that she was the daughter of a German military doctor, Edgar Schmidt, and his wife, whose surname was Milke, and who came from a family of Swiss landowners. As she grew up, Klara would have been expected to enjoy a respectable and comfortable middle-class life, but she made impulsive choices when she was a young woman. There is certainly no doubt that her choices and actions impacted dramatically and quite tragically on her children's early lives. According to my mother Ruth, it began like this. Dr. Edgar Schmidt of Berlin took in a lodger. The possible reason might have been that his wife was unhappy when he was called away for duty as a medical officer in the Kaiser's army. Perhaps his wife still felt like a foreigner and was homesick for her family in Switzerland. They had two grown-up daughters, Klara and Ellie, still single and living at home. Maybe Dr. Schmidt felt that his wife would feel safer and more comfortable with a man living in the house. And so he let it be known at the university that he had a room that he was willing to let to a suitable student. He was approached by a young Polish theology student. His name was Chaim Levi Rotblatt, and he soon took a room in their home. The girls were unused to having a bright young man around, but very soon they both decided that they liked him. According to what her Tante Ellie later told Ruth, Ellie and Chaim shared long philosophical and political discussions. In those days, in some German homes, the fact that Chaim was Jewish might have mattered, but to Dr. Schmidt it didn't seem to be a problem at that time. I'm sure he thought his daughters would be safe from temptation. After all, they had been brought up as evangelical Lutherans. Klara and Chaim fell in love. Undoubtedly, Klara must have been an attractive girl, but perhaps part of the attraction Chaim felt for Klara might have been rebellion against his father, who might have pressured him into studying Judaism. Who knows? This was what Ruth's Aunt Ellie told her many years later, and a lot of young men do rebel against their fathers. This is just another part of a mystery as yet unsolved. The mystery of my grandfather. Klara became pregnant, and the Schmidts, furious with her for bringing disgrace on their family, threw them both out. The couple found themselves in a desperate situation. They had to find rooms in a cheap boarding house in Berlin. Klara wrote to her papa, to her mama, and to her sister Ellie. Only Ellie replied, only to tell her that Papa and Mama were in complete agreement that she could no longer consider herself to be their daughter. Ellie added that she thought they had been very selfish to bring such shame on her family. So Chaim gave up his studies, and the couple survived in rented rooms as Klara's pregnancy progressed. Perhaps Chaim's family sent him financial help from time to time, but somehow I doubt it. I wonder if his family in Poland even knew about this relationship. When a baby girl was born in Virchow Hospital on Thursday, August the 7th, 1913, nobody from Klara's family came to see the new mother and baby. They named their daughter Ruth Charlotte. I like to think that Chaim was overwhelmed with love for the little thing, adored his baby daughter, and talked of her constantly. Klara might have laughed at him for it, as if the baby could understand anything. One thing is certain: the couple were not married then, and never did get married. Ruth's birth certificate only mentions her mother's name. There are no official records naming Chaim as her father. 7 months after Ruth's birth, Klara was pregnant again. I suspect that Chaim took all this in his stride, that he enjoyed being a father, loved his little daughter, and didn't particularly worry about the future. Klara was, of course, considered a fallen woman by the middle-class society in which she had grown up. To have 2 children out of wedlock in those days meant social isolation. They could never have imagined then that their private idyll was about to end, that world events would impact so drastically on their lives. When war was declared in 1914, Chaim, as a foreigner in war-torn Germany, suddenly disappeared. It was possible that a message got through to Klara to tell her where he was and that he was safe, but couldn't come to her. But what was Klara to do? She was heavily pregnant and had her little girl of just 1 year old to support. She had no income. For whatever reason, Chaim was out of the country and unable to come back to continue supporting them. Klara, destitute and ostracized by family and friends, moved away within a couple of months to a place where she was not known, to Dresden, where her baby boy, Hans Joachim, was born on the 17th of December 1914. Ruth, who was only still 16 months old herself, adored her baby brother from the day he was born. The children were so close in age that when they grew up, neither remembered a time without the other. Klara may well have hoped that, with her papa away at war, her mamma might relent and help them. Frau Schmidt, however, remained rigid in her denial of Klara's existence, and of that of her daughter's illegitimate children. She never again considered Klara to be her daughter. In a back street in the suburbs of Dresden, Klara rented a room above a bakery where the little family lived for the next 3 years. She had to work to support her babies, leaving the children alone for hours, with the baker's wife checking in on them from time to time. What else could she do? Klara's pay as a conductor on the Straßenbahn, tramcar, didn't go far, and the children kept growing out of their clothes as fast as she made them new ones. She trusted that the baker's wife was a good woman, but sometimes Klara thought the children were a bit subdued when she came home from work. During the years of the First World War, Klara managed on her own with no support, and she must have hated every minute of it. No doubt she resented her menial job, the miserable room, and the burden of her children, and felt every bit of shame of being an unmarried mother, a non-person, shunned by all respectable citizens. Perhaps she'd begun to resent Chaim, too, for leaving her in this mess, even though she knew he hadn't wanted to leave them. She must have been utterly exhausted by the time she returned home from work, and still had to care for her babies, wash clothes and nappies, and find them food. One day she was surprised to find Ellie sitting on her dilapidated old sofa. She took one look at her sister, and the weary tears couldn't be held back. It soon transpired that Ellie had come with a proposal, an idea that could ease Clara's situation. How old are the children now? 4 and nearly 3. Ruth is small for her age. How do you imagine I cope with no husband and no support from my family? Both women sat looking at the children. They both looked up at them with shiny blue-grey eyes. What can I do? Well, there are children's homes. The surge of hope that hit Clara's body was like a physical blow. Perhaps without the children, she could be reunited with Mama and Papa, be accepted into the family again. I'll make inquiries for you, Ellie promised. Weeks passed. At last she had a letter from Ellie. She had found a place in Dresden that would take the children into a Lutheran children's home in the Gruner district run by Pastor Spranger. They were to go there in the 3rd week of December, a day or so after Hans's 3rd birthday, and a week before Christmas. Klara wiped her eyes and began to plan. The children needed new clothes. She pulled an old black velvet skirt from her drawer. There was enough material here to make a dress for Ruth. She had a few scraps of white lace for the neck and enough to decorate a pretty white cotton apron for her too. There should be enough of the velvet for some little pantaloons for Hans. She wouldn't have those people at the children's home thinking that she hadn't looked after the children properly. Although she was only 4 at the time, Ruth remembered those clothes quite clearly. The day came at last, and dressed in their best, they travelled through Dresden on the train. Tram journeys were a rare treat, and although very young, the children were excited. They rubbed their hands over the steamed-up windows and pointed out shop windows decorated for Christmas. "Look, Mutti! Look, Tante Ellie!" At the children's home, Pastor Spranger and the housemother, were waiting for them. They seemed to be kindly Christian people, very pious. Klara signed all the papers, and soon it was time to leave. It wasn't so difficult. She told the children that she had to go to the shops and would be coming back for them soon. "I forgot to buy the Zwieback," it's a biscuit like French toast. She told them to sing a Christmas carol for the pastor while she was gone. They sat on the table in their new black velvet clothes and began singing. Ellie and Klara left quickly, closing the door behind them. They never came back. Klara left her job as conductor working on the Straßenbahn and supported herself for the rest of her life by working in the Janitze factory where they manufactured Delta cigarettes. After some years she had a relationship with a man called Willi, and with him she had 2 more children. Ruth didn't know this, and all through her childhood and teens she wrote to her mother begging her to set up a home with her and Hans. She was completely unaware that Klara was busy with her new family. It was years later that she found out about them. In the end, Klara's constant rejection was too much for Ruth. She refused to have anything more to do with her mother. Hans, on the other hand, got back in touch with Klara. He kept her up to date with Ruth's life. That was before Klara retired, when she was still working at the Delta cigarette factory. When she was dying, she asked Hans to contact Ruth, but my mother still refused to forgive her for abandoning them.